Well, good day, everybody. Another recording of the ADOS Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Joel Adcock, joined by some esteemed colleagues today as part of an ADOS panel. I'm really excited to kind of dive into sort of their journey through the ADOS webs that they've weaved and hear a little bit more about their experience. And really excited to kind of dive in and kind of pick their brains on a myriad of different topics today. So, if you're new to the podcast, you can subscribe through any of the major podcast channels or platforms through Apple Music, through Spotify. We've got our YouTube channel as well, where you can get caught up on all of our previous podcasts. I believe this is now episode 11 or 12. I start to lose track a little bit. So, but at any rate, appreciate everybody that's taken some time to listen in and view our previous podcasts. We hope that we continue to provide value on an educational level, and if we can do anything to improve content or information, certainly always reach out to myself or anybody here at the Rev team. So um, again, I'm joined by some great folks here. I'm really excited. Michael Frangioni from Essential Auto up in Canada, Brandon Miller from Miller Diagnostics in St. Louis, Missouri, and Mark Bruno, um, Mark from ADOS Calibrations of Florida. These gentlemen have been around the industry for a long, long time, and I'm really interested to hear sort of like first off how you guys got into this ADOS side of the industry in this world, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the life and a day of a technician and what you guys are focused on as far as like your goals for this year. And we'll see where the conversation takes us. Obviously, I know we've got some things that we would like to talk about. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Mark, if you want to go ahead and start. And again, just kind of give us a little bit of a background from your journey of like within the repair industry and obviously to where you're at today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Joel. Appreciate it. I came up from the body shop collision business. We owned Fender Mender Auto Body here in South Florida for a little bit over 20 years. Sold to a large group in 2020. And then I stayed on with them for 3 years. The last year I was there, we were focusing a lot on calibrations, pre and post usage. So it kind of got me in the spotlight of where we're heading as an industry. Kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the things that I thought were normal in this industry. In reading a couple articles, it just brought a spotlight on me focusing on opening up calibration centers here in South Florida and understanding the industry a lot better than what we did, even as we owned a shop before. There was a lot of questions, but we didn't have answers to it, and it opened my eyes and successfully opened up in 2023, and here we are in 2026.
Awesome. Appreciate it, and looking forward to our conversation today. Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon Miller, based out of St. Louis, Missouri, over on the Illinois side, so Metro. Got my start in ADOS just about 10 years ago. Got started with a local glass company here, expanded that to distributor, worked for both Autel as well as Launch, so kind of know all the aftermarkets or a lot of the aftermarkets. And then I've been out on my own doing calibrations now for going on 3 years, as well as being the co-owner of the ADOS network.
Awesome. Again, tremendous amount of experience and really looking forward to diving in with you today as well. So, and last but not least, Michael, rounding us out here tonight.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Michael Frangioni from Ottawa, Canada, our nation's capital. So I grew up in the collision industry, and while I was attending the Automotive Business School of Canada in Barrie, Ontario, one of the shops I worked for had just opened up a calibration center, and I started to really pay attention to it. And my family's in the collision industry. We have 9 locations, and we definitely needed our own calibration company in our city. Dealers were the only choice really at that point. We had the occasional calibration company starting to pop up here and there as well. And we said, you know what, we have a great market in our city for it, and we need a trusted and reliable calibration company. And that's how we started about 3 years ago.
Awesome. again, tons of experience. Really appreciate you spending some time with us today, and we're looking forward to diving in. So, you guys clearly have a lot of demonstrable experience, not only on the collision side, but also obviously specifically on the ADAS side. And I think that's really where we wanted to kind of take this conversation. As there's a lot of our audience and listeners that some are like yourselves. They've got a lot of experience. They've spent a lot of time on the diagnostic side. They've spent some time helping teach and train others. And then there's others that, as we like to say, are really kind of just starting their ADOS journey. They're really trying to get the fundamentals down, really trying to understand um, some of the basics. And I think from time to time, and you could probably appreciate this as much as anybody, is that it's easy to get a little bit complacent with thinking that we're getting further ahead, and yet there's still a lot of folks that are clamoring for resource and information and education, and we've got to remind ourselves, as you know, the calendar just flipped to 2026, and ADOS has been really part of our nature now for. I mean, I remember the Subaru commercials back in 2015 with the blind spot indicators and the side review, and that was like, aha, this is it. This is where the technology is going. So I mean, 10, 12 years, I mean, it's been around a long, long time. I guess the place I'd love to kind of start here a little bit is as you guys think about your conversations and working with your group of shops, and maybe sort of like what you're looking at for this year. Like, what are some of your goals and what are some of your ways that you're really trying to educate your customers on, I don't want to say it's the importance of ADOS, but I mean, I can't think of a better term than to call it that. So, Brandon, I'll start with you. Like, what would you say in that regard, as far as like, what's that conversation look like, and how are you trying to like really better your shops to understand like when to call you and have you come out and do the work that you do?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I'm noticing in my market is there's a lot of shops that if they haven't already bought in, they haven't already accepted, like, hey, we have to get this done. This is a safety reason, this is a liability reason. They are very hesitant. They are, of what I've seen is they want to kick back and, oh, well, insurance isn't going to pay for that. They have to. This is standard procedures. So informing the shops that are still kind of, I guess you would call kind of on the holdout is a big push that I'm working on as well. And then just ongoing education throughout. So there's still a lot of guys in this industry that they look at it as, no lights, no problem. It's like, no, that has nothing to do. Lights have nothing to do with what we're talking about. But ultimately they fall into old habits, and that's just kind of signs of the time, and times are changing.
Yeah, yeah, I think that cliche is it's. I would love to find out, or love to say at some point that it's going to get worn out. That it's left the lexicon of like where we live. That no lights, no codes, no calibrations. But unfortunately, that's still part of our day-to-day verbiage.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's continuing that education, continuing to like lay that information on your customers to make sure they really truly understand that, as I like to say, it's literally every vehicle you got to be thinking about that. If it's within the last 5, 6 years of model year, it's probably a pretty good chance you're going to be doing some calibrations on it. So,
Oh yeah. And
uh,
if I can, one thing that I've added to, especially my bigger accounts, especially whenever new manager, new estimator, comes in, and I get the comment of, oh well, this one probably doesn't need you. Let's pump the brakes. Let me make that decision, because if not, there could be problems down the line. That's what I'm here for.
absolutely. Mark, what are some of your things you're focusing on for this year? And same thing to you as far as sort of that customer education and conversation. What does that look like for you guys?
I agree with Brandon. One of the things that we strive to do, and especially myself, when I'm out at the shops, I'm also talking to the adjusters that are at the shops. A lot of them are working for the larger companies. A lot of times they have a lot of questions. They're hesitant to ask you, but once you build that relationship with them, it's amazing how many times they're going to reach out to you and, hey, is this accurate? Is this normal? Have you seen this before? And we're not biased at other companies. We're making sure we're giving them the documents they need to show them the exact position that manufacturer provides. We like working with the owners of the shops because, as Brandon says, there's a lot of turnover in our industry. So as long as we have the owners here when a new technician starts or a new writer starts, we know that they're going to back this up 100% because everyone has other companies they've probably worked with before, or as you know, as we've said before, no lights on the dash, the car is going to go. So our focus this year is we're really going to start working on doing in-depth diagnostics. We want to get a little bit better at fine-tuning it because the calibration part of it, with a lot of dynamic calibrations, with a lot less static, we want to set ourselves apart from our competition. So we're working strongly with a lot of our large network shops to help them with their diagnostic problems that they're having this year.
And I think that's the some of the technology, and I think some of the differentiators that you can apply are mainly on that diagnostic side. I think there's a lot of folks, and again, I not pointing anybody out here that may be listening, but there's a lot of folks that are chasing sort of that low hanging fruit of static calibrations, thinking it's plugging in a scan tool and following the steps, the prompts on the screen to say I can do this calibration. As again, you guys know probably as well as anybody, is way more complicated than that, especially when a calibration fails, or you have to figure out that the shop put a sensor on backwards or didn't install it correctly or pick something, right? I mean, it's a challenge every single day. And so it's that, again, that continuing elaboration of education, constant communication, opportunities to connect with not only the shop owners, but Mark, I think that's great talking to the adjusters. They're just involved as much as anybody as far as uh, you know, the dynamics and no pun intended on getting the car fixed to get it fixed correctly. So uh Michael, same question to you. Like what are you focused on this year? And like what does it look like for you guys in terms of that customer education piece?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is education from the shops to the customers right to the insurance companies as well. Educating the customers and themselves, go and talk to the managers, and they train their estimators. Sometimes we even go in and give little demos to the managers themselves, so that way they can explain to a customer when they see a calibration on their estimate or their invoice what it is and the importance of it. Um, it's we still come across on a daily basis. Um, some shops, if there's no DTC, no code on your pro scan after the repair, but there's no dash light, they don't think it's calibration, which is completely wrong, especially in this day and age, and especially with all the documentation that we provide for them, such as rev reports and other position statements. Directly saying after this repair, it needs XYZ calibration. So yeah, the biggest thing is to continue to educate. Well, I feel like once you have, a manager or a shop on board that understands the importance of calibrations, it's pretty easy going. Like Brandon was saying, we're the ones that make the final decision whether it needs calibration or not. And I hope it gets to that with every repair facility in our city and across our nation. Not just collision, even especially after the glass replacement shops and even mechanic shops as well.
Yeah, I'm curious on, in Canada on the, and again, pardon the pun, but the dynamics of like the relationship with the insurance companies. Obviously, here in the States, there's I don't want to call it a myriad of pushback, but I mean it's a topic, right? I mean it's something that we see, and I think a lot of it stems to lack of understanding of like how these things actually work and providing proper documentation. Do you guys see some of the same challenges up in Canada?
Absolutely, on a daily basis. Yeah, definitely. Some insurance companies are they understand the importance of calibrations, and we try and bring them into our shop as often as we can, and educate them and show them what a calibration is and what it entails. And some still want to push back constantly on it. At the end of the day, it's an education piece for them.
Absolutely. Mark, when you've talked to some of the adjusters in your experience, has there been any one of them that's been reluctant to like absorb some of the information from you guys?
No, we haven't seen that, but again, being in the collision industry, we have a really good relationship with all of them here in South Florida. So I think it might just be our 20 years of being in the collision industry that gave me a leg up on those talks. One of the larger insurance companies, Progressive, was very has done very well at having monthly meetings at our shops, especially with new writers. And that we didn't think we'd ever see that day, and it's almost on a monthly basis now. So for us, it's been very positive. We actually have a lot of adjusters that are now feeling really comfortable to reach out directly to me and ask me questions throughout the week. So it's been good for us.
So I think the lesson here is that it's okay to talk to folks on the insurance side. Bring them to bring them to your side of the table and say, hey, look, we're all on the same page here as far as we're concerned.
Absolutely.
I can speak from experience that it can be a little bit daunting, but at the same time, they're human. They want to do what's right. And again, I don't want to make this entire conversation around insurance, but I think it's important because you guys obviously again are way out on the forefront of these things, working with the number of shops that you do and having these conversations and being able to surface up the fact that you've had some positive um, experiences with adjusters in terms of them learning and understanding like how important it is to do calibrations. I
Mm.
think just can help everybody out from that standpoint. I want to kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk about like a day in a life of what you guys do and maybe for your teams from the tech side. So Brandon, I'll start with you. Would love to hear like sort of like what your day to day looks like. What is your team doing? If you were a technician working for your group, like what does it look like to wake up in the morning and until the time the last whistle blows at the end of the day? Like what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so step one is always going to be getting the scan tools up and running, searching for updates. If you do not already do that, highly, highly, highly recommend that that needs to be a number one the second you clock in. Then looking over your route. Depending on what you're going to have that day, if you see anything about module replacement, that's going to be a key for we're going to need OE software, for a lot of it. So then it goes down the line of, all right, is the laptop charged? Do we have all of our updates done? Did we buy our subs? All of that before you leave the shop or the office is definitely going to save a lot of time. Whenever you start diving into programming, I'm still a novice. I've been doing it for a year with the OE side, and I 100%, nope, I'm a novice. I'm still learning. But figuring that out beforehand instead of, all right, my hotspot's got just barely enough signal. I got to download this huge file. Don't want to put yourself in that. It's no fun. But then every car is something different. It doesn't matter how many times you've done a Honda front radar or a Toyota, you're going to come across one that's going to throw you for a loop, and you just got to be ready. And hey, no matter what, I know this is 3,000 millimeters from the front bumper. Doesn't matter. Follow the instructions. Something could change. Something could adjust.
Absolutely. I love that. It's been said recently, and I keep seeing it pop up more often. You got to read to understand. You can't skim. If you're not reading it at all, you're putting yourself at the detriment of not fixing the car correct or not understanding exactly what's going on. I think that's a key point that I want to point out that read and read and read and comprehend and read to comprehend and on and on. So no, but I appreciate that. Mark, what does a day look like for you guys in Florida?
So for us, we have a flow chart, so everyone knows exactly the tablets, the hotspots need to be charged the night before, laptops need to be charged the night before, iPads and everything as well. At 7 a.m., everyone gets a list of what's currently either pending from the day before or that's due that day because we have a hybrid system. We have two shops and we have three mobile units. And everyone knows that the email comes out at 7 a.m. so that consistency, everyone, we get alerts at 7:05, 7:03. If there's any changes, we need to be flexible. But the nice thing about it is all of our guys are on the same chat. So if they're in the field experiencing something, or if someone in the shop is experiencing something, I can see what's going on. And if I need to be at another location, maybe in West Palm Beach and I should be in Fort Lauderdale, I can just see by the volume of the chats and where we're heading to make necessary changes. And it's nice having the mobile units that can back us up as well. Steering angle sensors and seat weight, calibrations could be done in the field, so we can immediately identify which cars that we quoted that just had those and send those out there. That way, we don't have to use the time to travel to get those cars back to our shops with our porters that pick up and deliver cars.
I'm curious, on the communication with your customers, with your shops. That obviously there's that dynamic of bringing the car back to your facility to do a calibration, or the opportunity to do it on site because of the steering angle reset. What does that communication tail typically look like for you guys to let the shop know of like which path you're going to be going?
Well, I would say probably that was the biggest thing we did this year in 2025 or last year in 2025 was the communication piece. It seemed like emails and phone calls were rampant and we were getting a ton of them. So we got a lot of our, especially our larger shops, to really go into the quoting system. Send us the email estimate ahead of time, let us scrub it with Rev. That way you have a quote if it's going to help you with your supplement ahead of time. And then from there, they can schedule online with our particular shops or with a mobile unit. That probably cut down on 70% of the phone calls. And then each shop, especially our larger shops, they also have a chat with our group. So, and I'm included on all of them, so I can see if certain shops are chatting a lot more, and we can see there might be a little bit of an issue with some communication. We can get that fixed right away. But we've given the shops in the mobile techs the leeway to work directly with our partners, and it's taken a lot of time away from from us on the administrative side, because it was hard to let that piece go in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now that we let it go, it's we've seen a lot more fluid results, and it's been a
Yeah.
very positive experience.
Setting that expectation with the customers, like, hey, you can still call us, but this is the more preferred path, so that
Correct.
we can level set on knowing exactly what's going on with the vehicle by looking at the estimate first and foremost, because I can tell you from experience, having a report from a rev is all well and good, but not being able to see exactly what's going on as far as the other repairs and all the parts you're taking off and whatever else, it just makes for a way more fluid experience. And I think for the customer, they can appreciate that as well. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad to hear that you guys are kind of going down that route. Michael, I'll change things up a little bit here for you. I'm curious on, as far as like an ADOS process, and maybe that you can relate a little bit to like what you guys' experience is. What's the process that the industry still misunderstands and underestimates, do you think? And what's in your opinion on that?
I think the process that the industry underestimates is, ensuring that you're going through the lines on your repair order, capturing every single calibration that is required based off the manufacturer procedures and the reports to that vehicle. And in terms of calibrating, your techs need to follow the standard procedures that you set up and ensure that they're following them for every single vehicle. We have a standard procedure for every single vehicle: four corners, VIN, mileage, photo of dash codes. We set the tire pressures. We remove all the personal belongings from the vehicle. We account for the fuel deficiencies with jerry cans, supplementing for the weight. These are all things we do before the calibration is even started. Essentially, before your scan tools on this plugin. Sometimes when we're using elevator and scan tools, it would typically take quite a bit longer. We'll start the scan before we do the photos, just so we want to give you guys time to load up and whatnot. Yeah, the biggest thing is you have to ensure that everything's documented as well. Documentation is absolutely key for this industry.
I think you bring up a couple of really good points of having a really well thought out process, whether that's pre-scan, research, calibration, knowing all of those variables, getting into the vehicle, not necessarily doing them ad hoc. But the other part you bring up, I think that's really critical to talk about here, is that this is a potential for revenue, right? This is a profit center for shops to understand that, no lights, no codes, no calibrations. They're letting revenue walk out the door. And as we've seen across the states, I mean, claims volume is considerably down. Total loss values or total loss percentages are I think as high as they've been in recent history. And so being able to leverage every vehicle and every line item as much as possible, I think is of the utmost importance. And if you're, like we talked about earlier, if you're not assuming that every car is going to have some sort of, whether it's programming or diagnostic time or calibration, you're really letting, I think, a lot of that opportunity for revenue to walk right out the door. So I'm glad you brought that up, because something I definitely wanted to talk about, because it's I don't know if claims volume is going to pick back up. I mean, that's why we've got ADAS on vehicles, right? Is to make them more safe. So I think a lot of the trends that we're seeing are kind of going in that downward fashion. Brandon, I'll pitch it over to you. Kind of the same question here. Like, what do you think is the most, misinterpreted or misunderstood part of the ADAS process? And then what does your guys' process look like, really, kind of car by car?
So one thing that I would definitely say is misconstrued in our industry is that it's easy or that anyone can do it. And I totally get it. I was in sales. That was the pitch. Hey, look how easy this car is. Real world is completely different. And you're going to run into problems that maybe a vehicle had 5 years ago that are now going to be an issue for you. Understanding and diagnosing cars just off of a pre-scan is paramount of importance, especially for the guys that are strictly in the glass side. They don't know the diagnostic side nearly as well, and it's a hindrance. So understanding that, yeah, just because I can make something, be complete and calibrated in 15 minutes doesn't make it easy. It's just because I've got 10 years experience working on it. Standard operating procedures, especially for newer GMs, we use that one. Full tank of gas. If you're doing anything radar wise on a 24 or 25 GM, make sure that tank is at full. I've had two instances where first one that was on me, second one I slapped myself in the face because drove the thing for about 45 minutes. It's like, yep, it's at a quarter tank. Fill it up, put it up to full, took back off driving. It was done within 2 minutes. It was just that block of no, no, no. Procedures were not followed. You did not fill the tank. That's on me. But just going back to basics and then learning basic diagnostics is a huge, huge opportunity.
What would you say is a good place to go if you don't have, let's say, like dealership experience? Like, where would be a good place to start? Like, who's a good mentor or a good group to follow that can maybe help on that diagnostic side? Let's say maybe for somebody who's spent some time doing some calibrations, they've had some
Mhm.
experience, positive experience with it. Like, what does that trajectory or typically look like, do you say?
I mean, can I do a shameless plug for the ADOS network?
Absolutely. Please do.
So it's online database as well as live support. So we have guys every single day that Hondas are the biggest ones. VSA malfunctions. What do I do? What do I do? Am I good to move forward? We had a guy actually post about it today, and we give them the service information, we give them the real world, and then we give them, hey, this is the conversation you need to have with your customer. Explain to them X, Y, and Z. And without that extra nudge, I mean, all of us started out when there really wasn't an avenue, there wasn't a resource. You were relying strictly on, somebody that you might find that is knowledgeable on Facebook and is willing to give you the time of day. And even down to, especially on the glass side, all data or service information is really hard to come by because you got to beat it into, ownership's head of we need this information. Well, it comes at a really high price point. So ADOS Network, we put it together strictly for that. There's a gap between day one training and real world, and we're that gap.
Love it. Yeah. No, I
Can I,
appreciate you
can I
mentioning that. Yeah,
Sorry.
please do. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. So diagnostics is huge when it comes to calibrations, especially post collision. It's one thing to calibrate a vehicle that's like they show in the videos right off the dealership floor. And it's another thing to calibrate a vehicle post collision. Those tolerances off a little bit. Depends how hard it was hit as well.
Mhm.
Everything is at the factor. You run into broken wires all the time, especially here in Canada. We have a lot of salt from the snow and whatnot. Amount of corrosion we see as well. And this could even be a month down the line. We have a wiring harness that
Mhm.
didn't appear to be broken. Tiny, tiny pinhole in the wire. And a couple months later, after driving through the conditions that are weather, corrosion will start. And all of a sudden, we have no communication to a blind spot or to a front radar or a parking sensor. So these are all things that we have to account for. We're constantly pulling bumpers at our shop here. Bumpers, doors, and panels, you name it. And sometimes entire interiors of vehicles. So definitely diagnostics is huge, and um, I think that in order to be a great calibration shop, you need to have a couple key guys that specialize in diagnostics there.
Yeah. No, I love that. Mark, what's been your experience as far as finding folks that are kind of got that diagnostic side to them? Have you guys had some success with that?
We have in the beginning, we were hiring people that had already worked for companies, established companies, and we realized quickly they had great qualities, but they also trained a little bit wrong when it came to diagnosing. We were getting a lot of it needs this, but there was no explanation as why it needed that part. And we want to be very transparent with our company, within our customers. We don't want to guess at what parts need to be replaced. So what we found is each shop has a ex body tech that works for us. That's really good about taking cars apart, taking bumpers apart, finding the wiring harnesses that are damaged, and then we've trained the younger generation that are great with the software, great with the computers. We've trained them all in house, and it's been a dynamic team that we put together because you have the older generation that knows how to take cars apart, the younger generation that knows how to read the electrical schematics and find the faults quickly and not second guess at what parts need to be replaced, because that's the worst conversation you need to have with a customer. I told you it needed this $500 module and it wasn't that. So that's been really good for us in our third year. We've done really well with training younger techs that are coming up. We talk to a lot of trade schools. Lately, we've been in front of a lot of trade schools, and that's helped because not everyone is geared to go to college. I
Yep.
wasn't geared to go to college. I went straight into the collision industry, and it's a good path. It's a really good path for a younger generation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's cliche, but it's, you're not turning wrenches as much. Obviously, there's still some things you have to understand, but I think as far as car components and how a vehicle works, but at the end of the day, I think to start on that initial path to do some of the low hanging fruit type calibrations, as long as you've got the backup and the resources to to help when things fail or there's a challenging situation. I guess my one question would be, as far as like that training time when you bring somebody on that's maybe that younger generation, like what is that do you guys have like a standard SOP that you follow
We
or a
we do
timeline or?
we do. So the first 30 days are going to be in one of our locations. We want to make sure that this is the right path for you because it is an investment in our time. We make everyone ICAR trained and certified, so they have to go through the ICAR classes. So after the first 2 weeks, we really know if we have the right person in our store. Good demeanor, good attitude, work ethic, having someone that shows up to work on time. That's some of the things that we are so used to as growing up, but these kids today are a little bit lazy. So once they get through the first 30 days, if they are going to take the path of wanting to be in a mobile unit, then they're going to ride 2 weeks with a mobile tech or senior mobile tech. And then from there, we put them out on the road, or they're in the shop and we test their abilities. We're there for them. They have all the tools they need, the senior staff that have been with us for 3 years now. They're really good at guiding them. So in all, it's about a 6 week program before we kind of let them loose and see what they really can do on their own.
It's great. Yeah. Kind of holding their hand through it. They realize early on that they've got great opportunity in front of them, but there's a lot of things that they have to learn, obviously. So it's great that you guys have got, it's not so necessarily just here's your tablet, go get them kind of mentality. Because I think unfortunately there's a lot of places that do that, and it's maybe subjective to the fact that they've got more work than they can handle, and they're just putting their team in a spot where they're going to fail, right? Because they're
Right.
not preparing to put them in a position to be successful. So, um, Brandon, I guess a question to you would be, where do you see, and this may be reflective back too, as far as like what you see within the ADAS network and some of the communications and things, but where's the biggest struggle for an ADAS tech as far as, within the workforce? Like, what are they really struggling with? Is it specifically like on OEMs, like on a brand level, or is it certain types of calibrations, or is it sort of a myriad of different challenges?
I would definitely say a myriad. I mean, if you want to go, difficulty manufacturer wise, Subarus give everyone problems. That's just the reality. You can do one in the same spot with the same lighting in the same shop 15 times, and then one just not going to go through, and there's 100 reasons as to why. When it comes to diagnosing, I would say the biggest hurdle for most guys is understanding that just because your scan tool shows ADAS systems, that's not the only thing you have to pay attention to. You need to pay attention to the power steering, the ABS. You need to pay attention to codes in all these different units. And once you get that, it becomes a lot easier for you. As I would say, you don't step in as many piles of dog poop because once you got it, you can't get it off your shoe. You're stuck with it. Well, avoiding those is going to be the biggest key. So I definitely think that is where we're looking at on the tech side. On the management side, which is another thing that we do, it's understanding when. The biggest question is when do we do what? And filling that gap and getting them in touch with, hey, you definitely guys need to look into getting an estimate scrubbing software. You need to get moving on this because yes, it is an investment, but it is going to pay dividends.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least, I think, and I think you bring up a really good point. So it's um be persistent, follow your procedures, do what's right, ask for help, ask for resources, make sure you're checking
Mhm.
all the boxes, I'd like to say. So Michael, I'll turn the same question over to you. Like, where do you see the biggest struggle for the ADOS workforce nowadays?
For the what, sorry? For the ADAS?
For like just like the ADOS, like ADOS technicians, like what do you
Yeah,
see as like the
so
biggest?
I think the biggest challenge we have, especially in Canada, our population's a lot smaller than you guys. There's a lack of technicians with any sort of experience in ADAS altogether. So anyone we're hiring or bringing on board, we're training from the ground up, which has its positives, but it also delays the process a little bit. Um, the biggest challenge for us that we see on a day-to-day basis, um, in my opinion, it takes about a year to be a great ADAS technician. When it comes down to, we use primarily OEM tools 95% of the time. So learning the software for each manufacturer, sometimes even just logging into the software takes a little bit to learn. So, you have a new technician and you're training them on 15, 16 different laptops, all kind of at the same time because, you're not stuck. You might get five Toyotas in a row and then, or you might get, one vehicle of each manufacturer for, 10 different manufacturers in a row. So they have to be well versed. And that's just, in my opinion, what takes the longest in terms of training, outside of the diagnosis things because you're constantly learning. And then, what, on a daily basis, you're coming across new modules of your program that you haven't programmed before. So you're following the procedures and extending us to following, the OEM software and walking through the steps on that. And frankly, every single vehicle, year, make, model release. Sometimes even, what part of the year was made or where it was built, it could vary. So it's just the biggest thing is just the technology and learning that. In terms of setting up, the targets and whatnot, I'd say that's probably the easiest part of the whole calibration process, in my opinion. It's everything, uh, between, especially, like we're using the John Deere 2 point for 90% of our calibrations, everything statically. It has a resonant system, and we're able to just utilize that, and it walks us through the setup essentially. And then it's the technology that really is the difficult part there to
Yeah,
communicate with the vehicle.
yeah, the technology is certainly trying to make it a little bit easier for the most part, I think. But Brandon, you bring up a really good point on Subarus, and Michael, you could probably appreciate this when there's snow on the ground, snow on the road, and you need to do a
Yeah,
dynamic calibration. Guess what you're not doing?
yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, how do you handle that? Like, what does that typically look like when you can't do a certain dynamic calibration because of environmental factors?
Um, I always push for a reschedule and explain, hey, if you can't see the lines on the road, neither can the camera, right? So we're not going to be able to do this. Even if I wanted to, I know you want to push it out. I know you got customers waiting. We cannot do it. It's not safe and it's also not possible. On top of that, especially in collision, no shop wants you driving around a car they just spent 2, 3 weeks possibly building, fixing, and then, oh yeah, it's a little bit icy, but go ahead and take it for a test drive. Like, no, nobody wants that. So they're normally very easy to understand. And hey, let the plows get out this afternoon. There's no snow coming tonight. We'll get it tomorrow. No harm, no foul. And that's definitely just a standard that the industry I think needs to kind of come to grip with. I know a lot of manufacturers really want to hold on to no. We've always done dynamics. Like, yeah, but there's a lot of downside to this.
Yeah.
How good is your road? Is it a standard width? Are you using a back road because it's straight? Using a highway? All these things come into play that I don't think everyone really kind of dives deep on. And yeah, I'm a nerd. I get it. But I would much rather do a static any day of the week than a dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, there certainly could be challenges, and maybe Mark, you can appreciate this in South Florida. You've got to get out of the metro area to be able to do certain dynamic calibrations because of the requirement of driving at a certain speed for a certain period of time. Does that make things difficult for you guys at times?
You know, we're pretty fortunate that we have a lot of good roads that we know that are good, good to be good for the 7 or 10 miles. Obviously, the Ford F-150s are probably the longest dynamic calibrations that anyone has to do. But we really recently with the addition of two of your, largest network insurance companies out there having that menu pricing, it has came into question because we do have rain here, we don't have snow, but we've had to adapt to holding off the car maybe for an extra day to not do a dynamic because some of the insurance companies won't pay for a static. And that's a conversation we need to have with the shop because we've tried pushing it, and most of the time we're shut down. They'll just say, wait a day, wait another day. So that's new for us. We didn't have that problem 3 or 4 months ago, but now we're adapting to making sure that if that's what they want, we're going to hold off to the car another day and do the dynamic, try it again the second day when it's not raining outside.
So I've heard three OEMs at this particular point that have from time to time been struggles. I've heard Subaru, I've heard Honda,
Subaru's tough.
and those are definitely tough. You mentioned the Fords. There's a little bit of extra time there as far as doing the dynamics with the F-150s. Any other vehicles like, or how do you guys prepare for sort of the new technology that's coming out? So I'll give you a couple of examples. I read an article today in Arizona, specifically like on their commuter lane, they've added additional lane lines, and it's really throwing off like the lane keep assist systems from understanding there's extra painted lines on the road here. Like, what do we need to do? And they're actually recommending to consumers turn the lane keep assist off in the vehicle, which makes no sense to me. But then staying up to date, like on OEM changes, on like position statements, on procedures, like how are you guys staying on top of that information?
For me, it's definitely research. Staying up to date because, like I said earlier, just because a 2022 Honda CRV setup is this, guess what? 24s they're completely different, and there's a different standard, different procedure as to when, where, what, why. Um, Speaking of which, Mark, I have a question for you. Sorry, not to derail. I will finish my my answer. Whenever you have an insurance company that kick back and say, no, we want dynamic, let's say on like the new Telluride, instead of the static AVM, they want dynamic, but you can't get it out there. Do you guys go back and show them the documentation from Kia stating, hey, only do this under extreme circumstances? We would prefer you do the static. Like, how does that weigh in your market?
It's become a problem with Hyundais and Kias. As we all know, Hyundais and Kias specifically require you to do a angle check on their rear
Mhm.
blind spots.
Mm,
We are continuing to do them the right way, and we're eating that cost of removing the bumper to get the angle checks in there because of just liability reasons. We're hoping that it eventually comes to an end. We just need more support from more local vendors that we have here in our market. But usually it's just a conversation we're also going to have with the shop. Do they want to push it with the insurance companies? We want to make sure that they're not getting ruffling any feathers with their partners as well, because everyone is depending on these relationships with the insurance companies.
Of course.
So it's a fragile balance. At the end of the day, we want to make sure we're handling our customers the right way, but also keeping liability at bay. So it's pretty much a one-on-one, a daily discussion with different partners. Some insurance companies have been great with it, and some of them, obviously we see the menu pricing that we're dealing with right now. It's a step forward. At least they're acknowledging calibrations are needed, but the menu is not large enough to adapt to what these new cars are asking for. So you kind of constantly having the communication with your partners and addressing these issues on a one-on-one basis.
Absolutely.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, we'll change a little bit here. I know we've talked a lot about some of the challenges, and I think you guys have provided some tremendous information on ways of kind of rising to the challenge here as we talk about some different things. And obviously, we could probably sit here and talk for the next 3 or 4 hours and only scrape, really the tip of the iceberg as far as what this entire industry really holds for us. But Michael, I'll start with you on a kind of a different question, for more of a maybe from an optimistic outlook. Like, what gives you optimism about the future of ADAS repair? Like, what are you most excited about?
In regards to ADAS repair, I'm excited to see where this industry is going in the next 2 years, the next year, the next month, the next 5 to 10 years. ADAS is definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. There's been talks all for the past couple of years that cars are going to be self-calibrating, but we still have that huge age gap of vehicles that are on the road and currently being sold and will continue to be sold that will require calibrations. And personally, people are keeping their vehicles longer and longer, and I personally don't see calibrations going anywhere anytime soon. It will for the next, infinite amount of years. So I'm really excited to see, different technologies coming out. And I've been to SEMA for the past couple of years. From 3 years ago to this year, just every single year you see more technology there. I'm excited to see. I've heard a couple companies coming out with. I don't know how it's going to work, but dynamic in-bay calibration. Which if it's tested and approved by the manufacturers, that's definitely something to consider for also the northern climate.
Is that like a rolling wheel of some sort?
Some sort, yeah. It might be like some sort of dyno with a screen. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with it, but that's definitely something to look into, especially with our climate, if it's approved by the manufacturers. And yeah, so the biggest thing for me is just technology and hoping that we have a some sort of governing body would be nice too in regards to ADAS, so that way there's standard procedures, so not every Joe Blow is opening up a calibration shop
Yeah.
and doing them properly. The biggest thing too for us and where we see a huge struggle with right now in this industry is lack of education from the dealerships themselves as well. An insurance company, may kick back your quote or your invoice, and they call the dealership, which doesn't have a copy of their estimate. Oftentimes doesn't even follow their own repair procedures, and typically they're talking to either the admin or service writer or service advisor, as opposed to the master tech or someone who specializes in ADAS in the dealership, which typically doesn't really exist, to get a quote and say, well, I'm saying it needs 3 calibrations, and the Honda dealership, like, for example, is saying doesn't even need calibration if there's not a light on the dash, or it only needs the front radar calibration, or whatever the case is there. So I'm just hoping that there's some sort of body there that can educate and help us shops out there. That's the biggest thing.
The standard issue is that there's no standardization of any kind, right? I mean, that's really the overarching sentiment, is that every OEM's different. They've got different terminology, different requirements, different procedures, unrelenting task to stay on top of it when you talk about 25, 30 brands that we might see on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Like Brandon, like you said, really every car is unique. Every situation is unique. Every repair is unique. Everyone's going to be a little bit different from one to the next. I personally, I'd love to see some sort of standardization come into the industry, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. But from regulation standpoint, at least here in the States, I mean, we're looking at FMVSS 127, which is the AAB, man, these short years. What kind of change does that have as far as the complexity goes of types of calibrations, and the fact that does it create more awareness now for shops? Like they literally have no excuse now to throw a blind eye to things, because that's been proven to be probably the most safe type of ADAS functionality, or mitigating the most amount of accidents is forward-facing cameras and calibrate or collision warnings and things like that. Yeah, I'm with you. I think if you embrace the technology, embrace the challenge of like what's coming out, it's going to continue to evolve, and like you say, it's not going anywhere. Having that kind of optimism, I think, is really, really key. Brandon, I'll throw the same question to you. Like, what's got you excited about the future of ADAS?
Just to piggyback off that, sensor fusion. It's all building blocks to the automated vehicle or the autonomous vehicle, right? So everybody wants to get there. They're all in kind of a rush, but we're kind of stuck. There needs to be legislation passed to actually get these things more widespread. These sensors aren't going anywhere because they're what's building it, right? So once again, I do not see ADAS going anywhere. Recalibration's very likely not going to go anywhere. What I'm really interested, once again, is seeing some form of a governing body and stating, look, you have to follow these procedures or it's not acceptable. Um, and I would stand by that. Right now we definitely see a lot in the industry of, you know, kind of like as has been said, Joe Blow, just get some equipment and we're going to get after it. Okay. That's, you know, American spirit, American dream, go do it. But this is safety systems. These are systems that are installed on vehicles to make them mitigate accidents, keep people safer on the road. If you're simply looking for a success screen, you're in the wrong industry.
Yeah.
That's not what we're about. And, I take it to heart, but I see a lot of guys that they just, well, it said success, so send it. It's like, no, 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 no. Did you do a post inspection drive? Did you verify that this is working? Is it working how it's supposed to? Do you know how it's supposed to work? All those things really come into play. And I would love to see more of that in our industry. Just really taking the time.
It's great about this group too, is you guys are really behind the educational component of like helping the industry lift together, right? I mean, you guys are all really dedicated to not only to your craft and to your business and to your teams and constituents and customers. You bring up a really good point. It's not so much that you want to see people fail, you just want to see them succeed by accessing the right information, getting educated. Because you unfortunately can't just walk into this industry. I don't care where you're from. I started out in the industry 15 years ago and I didn't know any of them. I knew a little bit about cars to be dangerous from the front end to the back end, but that was about it. And it's like it's a really complicated industry. Now you throw these sophisticated ADAS systems in there, it's really daunting to say the least. Like I said with Michael, you embrace that challenge. You can be really, really successful at this as long as you continue to educate yourself, stay out in front of all the changes and the updates from the OEMs and all the procedures and things like that. Uh, yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Mark, I'll share the same question with you. What's got you excited about this next year and really the future of ADAS?
I feel confident that in the near future, we're going to see some type of legislation that's going to make it mandatory that even used cars have at least a post inspection or a pre and post inspection for safety items to make sure that they are working as they should be. Again, I do not see ADAS going anywhere. I don't see it slowing down. The other thing I'm excited about is we are starting to see, heavy duty trucks having ADAS features. We've been looking at gearing towards doing the UDs and the Hinos for some of the carriers that are renting them out. They do now have forward-facing cameras to help with automatic braking. We're seeing school buses now that have cameras on the sides for blind spots. So that's going to be a whole new wave of vehicles that are going to need to be calibrated coming forward. So again, these are things that keep coming down. We embrace them. We want to see these challenges and changes, and we just want to keep moving forward and handling as much of this the product that's out there for the consumer.
Yeah, heavy duty trucks. I mean, that's a massive, massive untouched, I think, part of the industry at this particular point. And, I know you guys are probably on the road a lot. I'm on the road a lot, and I see tons of trucks, tons of, and I just think about like all that weight, all that speed. And if I'm in a vehicle in front of a truck that's been calibrated or an attempted calibration, but the radar is pointing straight up and I go over an overpass, and I've heard this happen where the vehicle just literally just comes to a complete stop. And that truck's behind me. And it's a scary proposition, but it's wide open pastures at this particular point as far as that opportunity goes. So I'm glad that you guys are embracing that and looking at, you're not diversifying necessarily your service, but you're diversifying like who you're providing that service to. And I think that just speaks paramount for, opportunity down the road. And I'd love to hear that. So, um, we're getting close to our time here, guys. I'd love to kind of wrap things up here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk. And again, like I said, we could probably sit here for hours on end and just talk about a myriad of different things within the industry, and certainly would love to do that at some point. But um, I'll get you out of here on this. If you guys had 5 minutes to talk to a shop owner, um, maybe any shop owner for that matter, from the collision side, like what would you tell them? What would your advice be to them? And Brandon, I'll start with you soon.
So I'll break that into two. I won't take the whole 5 minutes. If I was talking to a shop that maybe I was trying to sell my services to, I would 100% look. ADOS is liability and revenue. Yes, there is revenue component to it, but liability has to be first. If it's not, you don't need to be in this industry. Taking care of the vehicles, making sure everything's properly done, that's paramount. There's no two ways around it. If I was talking to, let's say, a shop that I already am doing work for, but they might, well, I don't think insurance is going to pay for it. Here's the documentation. This is what needs to be done. I'm going to do the homework for you. There will be no additional phone call. This code is presently here. We need to make sure that this code is gone so the systems you worked on are functioning properly. Getting through that hurdle and that educational piece, as we've stated, is definitely the biggest stretch.
Awesome. Be great advice. Great place to start. Great conversation. I'm sure it would conjure up a lot of questions, hopefully, from that shop owner to want to continue to invest and understand further. Michael, same question to you. If you had 5 minutes to spend with each shop owner, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, just I do it almost weekly. I'm talking to different shop owners, and two big things that come up are insurance companies and liability. And you know what? We say to them, these vehicles require calibration. Now we show them examples of why they're important. We give them repair procedures, why they're mandated. And we're not calibrating because we feel like calibrating a car. We're calibrating these vehicles because they need to be calibrated in order to repair your vehicle properly and to deliver it back to the customer pre-collision spec. It's mandated, it's required, and you know what? It's people rely on these systems now to drive. I don't know
Yeah.
about you guys. It's happened to me a handful of times where you're not paying attention. You look out the window, you see something, and all of a sudden your car goes beep beep beep, and slams its brakes for you. A good example, even myself. This was about a year ago. I was backing up, and there was a car on either side of my, and I couldn't see any vehicle coming, so I slowly started creeping back, and I was able to go pull out. There was a teenager on one of those electric bicycles, probably doing 40 or 50 kilometers an hour, so it's like 30 miles an hour, give or take, 25 miles an hour. And didn't see them at all. And all of a sudden, my truck stopped for me, gave me a warning. Sure enough, someone flew by on a bicycle. So these are systems that we shouldn't rely on them, but they definitely aid ourselves, and people become reliable. We need to ensure that these vehicles are returned back to the customer safely, and that's just the biggest thing. It's just the liability.
That real world experience, it's a great story to tell, every time, like how this actually works and why it's important. I mean, you think of the consequences had that not been something that was on your vehicle. Being
Yep.
able to share that, I think, is pretty profound. So, Mark, same question to you.
And I agree both with Brandon and Michael on their points. The one thing that we're seeing a lot of, and we see it in every single publication, is the selling of the tools, the selling of the stands between the various companies. I've talked to quite a few shop owners, and even in recent days, that have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting my own setup. I see it as a huge profit center. Spend some time with us." And I have a shop coming to visit me on Friday. I said, just spend a day with us in the shop, see what you're getting involved in, because they're selling a tool, and I get it, that's their job, but it's not as simple as it looks. You have to have a dedicated space, you have to have a dedicated person. If you're doing them all day long and you can afford to have a dedicated person, that's great. But if you think you're going to teach a porter or a detailer to do it, especially when you're looking at static calibrations, you're going to get extremely frustrated.
Yeah.
And then that $100,000 investment is going to be sitting in a corner collecting dust. And we're seeing it a lot more lately. Just we're seeing a lot of companies out there just selling it as a huge profit center. It's simple. It is. It could be simple if everything's aligned properly and the sun and the moon is great. But there's going to be days you're going to get frustrated. You're going to spend 6 hours on a calibration, and you're going to be cursing that salesman up and down.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we've been talking to a lot of shop owners. That it seems like lately, I think because of the end of the year push, we got a lot of calls about shop owners just saying, "Hey, I'm going to buy my own equipment. We'll use you when we need you." And we've already experienced a few customers earlier last year that have already sold off their equipment and went back to using us full time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's tremendous advice. And I think that is it's certainly a curious thing for the shops to wonder, like, could we do this on our own? Yeah, we're being told it's relatively easy. However that's phrasing is going or that talk track looks like. I mean, same when I was at Precision Diagnostics, I'd walk into shops that we were servicing every single day, and I'd see pallet with equipment sitting there in the corner, and I'm like, "What are you guys going to do with that?" Well, we think we can do it too, and I'm like, "Okay, let's come to an agreement here that there's going to be times where you guys are going to call us, but make sure it's not Friday at 3 o'clock when we're busy and you guys can't figure out this vehicle. Let's just make sure we put a line in the sand to understand that there's going to be times where we're not going to be able to service you because of the fact that you've got this equipment." Now, look, I applaud the ambition. I think there's a path at some particular point with the number of vehicles that need recalibration. Folks, technicians, that we need more people doing calibrations. I mean, it's still a huge gap, I think. So I don't want to necessarily curb anybody's ambition, but at the same time, make sure you've got a viable sublet. Make sure that you've got a good relationship with them so that if you do choose to go down this path, there's going to be times where you're going to run into challenges. You're going to run into situations where you don't have enough space or you don't have the right equipment. Make sure you've not burned that bridge with your sublet, because more times than not, you're probably going to have to call them and say, "Hey, look, we made an attempt. We got to fail. Can you help us out?" Again, I think you leave it to the experts, quite honestly, like you guys. This is what you do, right? This is what you live and breathe every single day. I think of the calibration side of the diagnostic, the programming, and running in parallel step to the traditional collision repair side. You've got experts that know sheet metal and parts replacements and refinish, and then you've got experts like yourselves that understand from pre-scan to post-scan and everything in between of what needs to be done. And again, I think that's phenomenal advice. And, I hope people take that to heart, honestly, because I think it's really easy to think that this is going to be for us to do. And I think a lot of people take advantage of that when they do. They come back 6 months and say, "Hey, you know what? We sold all the equipment. We want you guys to come back and help us out." So, but I appreciate that. So, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. This has been, like I said, we could talk for hours, certainly. Um, I'd love to have you guys back on again at some point if you'd like to be part of this again. I think there's a sort of maybe a part two that we could dive into some more things here later in the year, and we'd love to get you guys back on again. But again, I want to say thank you. Appreciate your time. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep educating. Keep talking to your customers and doing all the right things. And much success in 2026.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.